community property. So what we're looking at is, we've obviously have the couple from Japan moving to Thailand. And the question that comes up is, they're resident now in Thailand, but what happened to the community property rights that they had in Japan? Is that transposed into their Thai property, or is it effectively because they're resident in Thailand, is it now that the Thai community laws will apply in Japan? Trying to figure out how the community matrimonial domicile, as it moves across into Thailand, whether or not it has an effect on the assets as they were then owned within the community regime of Japan. So the question will be, will Japanese community property rights continue to apply to Thai and Singapore property, even though the couple are now resident in Thailand? And then reversing it, will Thai community property rights apply to Thai, Japanese, and Singapore property going forward because they're resident? And then what will Singapore make of all of this because of the change of residency? So I think the first one is for Atsushi-chan, for you to have a go. Will Japanese community property rights continue to apply to Thai and Singapore property?
Yeah, the answer is yes. From a Japanese perspective, the Japanese law will still apply because Akira and Akin have still Japanese. They are still Japanese nationals. So that's why Japanese, community property rights rules will still apply. And under the Japanese law, we have a 50-50 rules. So basically, we have to follow such 50-50 rule. But there is one exception. So if they enter into one written agreement which says the governing law should be Thai law, that should be okay from a Japanese perspective. So which means they can change the governing law from Japan to Thai by signing some written agreement.
And for question number 2, agree with Oishi-san. The Thai community property rights apply to Thai, Japanese, and Singapore property because under the law of conflict, Akira and Kim is a foreigner but stay in Thailand in this case. Go back to the domicile definition under the law of conflict not clearly specified, but right. Go back to the general law under Thailand law. The general law, the definition of domicile mentioned in the Thai Civil and Commercial Code means that the principal resident. In this case, for this slide, I understand that Akira and Akin is a domicile in Thailand because both of them stay in Thailand for the business, for the family, not a tourist, not for study short term, but in this case, it's a principal residence. And then if any divorce, the Thai court will be adopt this case for Thailand law.
Right, so we got a clear conflict there. So we have Japanese law seeking to apply across and then Thai law resisting it. I think from a Singapore perspective, it will be slightly confusing because they would have to see whether or not there has actually been a change in there's a change in the matrimonial domicile across. So from a common law standpoint, which would apply in Singapore, it's actually a fairly difficult question because the law applying in this area is fairly ancient, and the transposition of the change of a couple's matrimonial domicile is not something that's heavily trafficked in the case law. So that would be something that would need to be looked at. Generally, you can have a change and it can be recognized, but it would be deal with, and it would occur because things like divorce, death would give rise to the community issue.